You're listening to Ordinary Eccentrics. I'm Courtney Lofton, and together we'll uncover the extraordinary lives of ordinary people. Let's hop into it. Hello.
Hey, Courtney, how are you?
I'm good, Janet. Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thanks very much for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
Yes. Okay, so this hour will go by fast, and we'll start just by having you say your first and last name, maybe introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Janet Meintjes. I'm originally from South Africa and I'm currently living in the UK.
Okay, awesome. Okay, we can start with your origin story. So you said you're originally from South Africa. Where were you born and raised?
Oh, wow. That's a very interesting story I've got, but I was born in Johannesburg, but I have lived in probably most of the provinces except for Cape Town. Um, Moved around. I was in the Air Force for a number of years, so hence the lots of moving parts in my history. So Durban, Johannesburg, Bloemfontein, Pretoria, and quite a few different other places as well.
So where did you spend most of your childhood, like your adult
Um,
years?
I'd probably say most of my childhood, it was split between a small little town called Kroonstad. I was probably there the majority of my kind of like primary school, and then moved down to Durban for high school. And when I finished high school, I joined the Air Force. So I was in the Air Force for about 11 years, and was moved around in various little places within the Air Force because you go where they need you. You don't really have a say, you know.
Right. What what was what was life like growing up in South Africa?
You know what? As a kid, I would probably say some things were tougher than others. And just because I was adopted,
Okay.
and I found my family probably about 10, 12 years ago. But during my, I want to say, adopted life, for want of a better word, it wasn't the best. You know, everybody thinks that sometimes when you're adopted, you have this amazing fairy tale life. Sadly, I didn't have that. My brother and I were adopted. We had an abusive father. So my mother was very poorly. She couldn't look after us. So hence she gave us up for adoption. Um, but I think when you live in Africa, amongst all the other challenges, you become very resilient and you just get on with it and you learn how to mask, what you're going through. And you just become a survivor.
Right. Were you adopted then a toddler or by a
Yeah,
older child? Do you remember that?
I was about 2.5 when I was adopted. My brother was 11 months older than me, but we didn't realize, or should I say, they didn't realize at the time, that there was something wrong with my brother. Um, and we only found out many, many years later, after finding biological family and all the rest of it, that he had an illness. I've actually got it as well. My mom passed away from it. Sadly, my brother passed away from it. There's lots of medication we can't take, etc. So you go through life having challenges, but you don't know why you going through these challenges, and why when you take certain medication you just get sicker and things like that, because if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to find it.
Right. No, yeah, it's like a mystery. You're kind of
Yeah,
experiencing mystery illness.
yeah.
So
So
when you were in school, were you like in a military program or I guess
no,
I'm
no.
curious
When
how
I
you got into the Air Force.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. My dad, um, he he wasn't in the military per se. I When I finished school, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. So we had people coming around from the military having a chat with us, and I just decided to join the Air Force. I thought, oh, this is how silly it is. I looked at the Army and I thought, I don't like the brown uniform. I looked at the Navy and I thought, no, that's too white. It'll get dirty too. This is how I made my decision. That's absolutely crazy.
Motivated by fashion.
I was motivated by fashion and the blue color because, it's one of my favorite colors. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And then I applied. And back then, which is many years ago, too many years ago, the recruitment process was very, very strict. So they'd only have a very small intake, every year. And what happens is I didn't choose what I wanted to do when I joined the Air Force. I just said, I want to join, and you do a whole lot of aptitude tests and psychometric tests and all the rest of it. When you go in, you do a panel interview, and there's probably about 10 people on the panel. And it can be quite daunting because one minute you've got, a psychiatrist talking to you, then you've got the head of so-and-so speaking to you, then you're speaking in one language, and then you've got to speak in another language. So you've really got to think on your feet. So when I joined and I started, they actually selected the mustering for me. So they put me into communication. And by doing so, I then became a cryptographer. So I was doing all the encoding and decoding. So it's almost like being part of the Secret Service.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. So I did that for about 11 years. Yeah, it was really
That's
cool.
an amazing role to get into right out of high school.
Yeah, it's, obviously you do your basic training where you sweat blood and tears for the first few months, and you wonder why on earth you decided to join this program. Sleepless nights, ironing your bed, sleeping on the floor, making sure everything's measured up and polished properly. And yeah, as the time and the years went by, I just kind of used to nominate myself for any and every single course and opportunity just to kind of progress. And I really enjoyed it. So it is definitely an experience and a half, to say the least.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Were
Yeah.
you always a disciplined sort of child, or did you look
Yes.
for that sort of? Tell me more about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I was very disciplined because although my dad wasn't a military man, he was in the military for a very short period. I think he was an RSM, a regimental sergeant major, by the age of 21. But he left and he did his own work and that kind of thing. But I've always been a very disciplined, organized individual. I'm one of these that I can't handle untidiness. Things have got their place. It might be a little bit OCD, it might be a little bit from the military, I don't know. Everything must have its place. There's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I'm trying to adapt that.
It's what I do feel for people who struggle to, some people just work in organized chaos. I can't do that. My desk, I work a lot from home, and my desk is very organized. I know if I have to walk in here at midnight and you tell me to pick up a certain item or look for something, I will know exactly where it is. I don't need to switch on any lights, that's
Oh, wow. Yeah. Have
yeah.
you
So
ever heard of like the I think it's like a French discipline of mise en place,
yeah.
and it's like used in kitchens and like everything in its right place.
Yes. Yes, that is kind of me as well. And fortunately, my husband is also military, so we kind of like on the same page when it comes to things like that. He also just doesn't like things being, you know, everywhere and yeah, no, which is great because if you listen to bless some people when they moan about their partners and say, oh, I've got to pick the washing up and they throw it on the floor, I've got to put their dishes away and things like that. I don't have that
Right.
problem.
Did you meet your husband in the military?
I did. It was a bit of a bizarre story because um, we we were engaged in the 90s. And then life happened. I was promoted and transferred and all the rest of it. And anyway, very long story short, I was transferred out of the region. I ended up getting married. He ended up getting married. Life happened. And I relocated to the UK. And, you know, things didn't work out between my first husband and I. We ended up getting divorced. My um, my then fiance also ended up getting divorced. I relocated back to South Africa, and we kind of like just picked up where we left off, and we had like a 25-year gap, that we hadn't seen each other, and we just literally picked up where we left off, and we've been back together now for 10 years.
That is so romantic.
Yeah, so we got back together, been back for 10 years, and we've been married now for 4 years. So, I
Congratulations.
thank you. Very bizarre. And I've often say to him, had we got married then, maybe we wouldn't have stayed together. You just don't know. We've learned very hard lessons in our life,
Yeah.
and we are just so in sync. He is amazing. I don't have to tell him to do anything, you know.
Yeah, you're on the
I
same
feel
page.
sorry for these individuals when they talk about their partners and they're like, oh, he never does this and or she never does this, and I'm like, we just not like that. I don't have to tell him anything. If I'm busy, for example, busy cooking or something like that, and he sees washing needs to be done, he'll grab the washing, put it on, or whatever. We are just so in sync. It's unbelievable.
Do you feel like that comes from the lessons you learned being in other relationships and being away from each other and coming back, or is it just that's how you
Yeah,
two are?
I think it's definitely a bit of a combination because when he got divorced, he looked after his two girls by himself. And I mean, for a guy to be bringing up, two teenagers or almost teenagers is tough. Girls are tough anyway to bring up.
Hmm.
Um, and I think he learned a lot of lessons. And when I kind of, how can I say, came back on board, there's a lot of things which I taught him as well and showed him. And it's just, yeah, like I say, I think it's just life experience, um, and just a little bit of self discipline and knowing what we want from each other and open communication, you know, because I do believe that when you're in a relationship, both of you must grow. Maybe you might not grow at the same speed, but you can't have one being stagnant and the other one, just going a million miles a minute.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
hang on a second. I just want to pause. Is it echoing for you on your end?
no.
Oh, I'm getting just little bit of an echo, but if maybe it's just in my headphones.
Oh, not this
Hang
side.
on. Yeah. Okay, it's sounding a little better. Okay, I'll edit that out. Okay,
Okay.
well, I want to ask more about relationships. So, what sort of advice would you give for someone who's in a relationship and they're recognizing that their partner maybe isn't growing, or because a lot of times we can get in relationships with people and we're thinking oh, they'll change or they'll get better or
Mm,
they're just growing into themselves, and we're always kind of rooting for this ideal version of the person we're with.
I
But
think,
when you act, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think one of the things we must get out of our heads is having this ideal person. The
Hmm.
ideal person doesn't exist. This is my personal view on it, because we'll paint this picture and then we'll say, okay, let's say, for example, absolutely hypothetical, oh, they need to be tall, dark, and handsome, and they must have this and they must have that. And you have a whole tick box exercise. And then you end up ticking the boxes, and then there's one or two boxes that are not ticked, and you'll be like, oh, but maybe, maybe, maybe. I'm one of these people, and I know this is going to sound strange, but don't have any expectations, and then you won't be disappointed, is one of them. And then if you're in a relationship with somebody, I do believe that you have to have absolute transparency. And I think that's the problem, because a lot of relationships nowadays are very artificial, and it's all based on feelings. I feel warm and fuzzy when this person is next to me, or I mean, my husband, he still surprises me now with flowers and odd things and random little notes everywhere, and I just absolutely love it you know
Hmm.
um but you have to put effort into a relationship. I think a lot of times when you want something from a person, let's say, um let's just use flowers, for example. I love flowers. I like receiving them unexpectedly. But then I think to myself, what would my husband like for me to do that he would appreciate? Because we're the human race is very selfish in general, because we'll be like, I want, I want, I want. But we've got to think, what can I give my partner? Because when you start treating your partner the way you want to be treated, they'll realize, okay, listen, she's treating me so well, she's treating me nice. What can I do in return? You can't
Right.
expect you can't expect something if you're not willing to put the effort in. We're very quick to complain too, and say, they don't do this, they don't do that. Um, but then again, you must also not be a doormat, you
Right.
know, um, because that's also not going to be good for the relationship. Biggest thing, communication, communication, communication. Um, and if there's things that your partner is not doing doing that you don't like, sit down and have a chat and say, I noticed you did A, B, C. When you do that, this is how it makes me feel.
Hmm.
Are you aware of that? Because if you just come in and start shouting and start moaning, and they'll just walk away and say, oh, she's forever moaning. She's a real nagger. I can never do anything right. But if you don't actually sit down and talk to the person, say, when you are throwing your clothes on the floor, I feel like you're disrespecting me. I feel like you just consider me as the domestic to clean up after you. We're in a partnership. And one of the terms I dislike is when people say, oh, it's 50-50. It's not 50-50. It's 100-100, or not at all.
Yeah.
You know, when you put effort into a relationship, you're not going to only put 50% effort into a relationship to make it work, are you?
Right.
Right.
And then
And then
the 50-50 thing turns into each person tallying up what the other has
yeah,
put in. Yeah, that's
100%. And the thing is, I think also when you talk about tallying, it's a good thing that you brought that up. Is when people start saying, "Oh, but I made the dinner," and they say, "Oh, but I hung the washing up," and or things like that, then you say, "Okay, well, if we're going to do that." Some relationships, they might say, okay, you know what, you take responsibility for these chores or tasks, or you know and I'll
Mhm.
take responsibility for these. Then there's none of this tit for tat. Oh, well, I've done more than you. And my husband's amazing. I might work late at night, he'll come home, and the next thing I hear, he'll be in the kitchen and he's busy preparing dinner, and I'll say to him, thank you so much for making dinner. And he'll be like, but you've been working. And I'll be like, but I appreciate it. And I think that's another thing that we tend to sometimes forget, is to actually acknowledge what the other person has done for you. It might be silly. They might have, they might make you coffee every single morning, and it's a routine they get into. But it's, every now and again, I think it's great just to say, when you bring me coffee every morning, I really do appreciate it. Makes me feel special or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and it's communicating, and it's not just communicating when things are going wrong or annoying you or upsetting you, but also communicating the good things, the things you're grateful for, and acknowledging that and appreciating that other person.
Absolutely. And I do think that we live in a society where everything is instant. And there is definitely a lack in general. I'm not saying all people, but there's definitely a lack of appreciation for the small little things. We're
Right.
very quick to say thank you for something that's big and visible, or I don't know, maybe expensive or something like that. But sometimes just being really appreciative of the little things can make somebody's day an absolutely amazing day, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think that's very important in life. I don't know. I think as I get older, all these things just have more value to me than um, materialistic things.
Right.
Because I'm by no means a materialistic person, but it's the little things that mean so much. Because at the end of the day, one day when we all go, you cannot take one of these little materialistic things with you. Not one.
Right. Like the
So
gratitude and appreciation is really the biggest gift.
yeah, it is. And like I say, transparency, pure openness, and honesty. You know, and I think the other thing is people find it difficult to be honest,
Yeah.
or they'll they'll have a conversation, and if there's something that's bugging them, they might mention 60 or 70% of it because they'll be like, oh, I don't want to hurt the person's feelings. But then you've got to think, well, if you're not feeling comfortable, how are you going to get that rectified if you don't give your all? This is where I talk about the 100-100 scenario again. Because there's no point voicing 70% of what's hurting you or irritating you if you can't, because you're not going to get it sorted.
And
How is that?
yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like I even do that myself. Like if I will like give like little bits, and this is not even just in relationships, but in friendships as well.
Yeah.
Like you'll say something, but you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings or take it too far. And it's like a people pleasing nature to not want to upset someone,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you'd rather hold in your own upset for the sake of someone else because maybe we don't have the skills or can't cope with the problem solving that will comes with the communication. And it is like an element of confrontation, like being able to
Mm.
have that confrontation without, losing your mind and like saying things you don't mean, but still being able to speak what's on your heart and kind of say what's bothering you. Why is that so hard?
But you know what? That's very true. It just reminds me of an incident that I've actually had this week. So, a good friend of mine, I've known her, oh, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years or so. She's Australian. She lives in the UK as well. And we haven't seen each other. I bought a house just over a year ago. We haven't seen each other for, she hasn't been to my house for a year. I've lived in this house for a year. She's online marketing and all this. And when I go on to platforms, she's doing amazing. She dropped me a message and she was like, oh, why am I so quiet? And I said, well, I've just been busy. I'm busy with Launchpad. I've been busy with my coursework. I'm doing a full-time job. I've got 3 grandkids. It's just really, and just my own mental state hasn't been great, just with a couple of things going on. And then she came back and she said, oh, but I didn't. And I said to her, well, you seem to be very busy because your online business seems to be booming. You've been in London, you've been doing this, that, and the next thing. And she came back and she said, oh, you know what, I was making all these assumptions that you don't want to talk to me, that, I was like, if you were really that worried about me, why did you not pick up the phone and just say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I think, and this is just another, example of communication gone wrong, because we also make assumptions. We are very good at making assumptions. And I said to her, it looks like you're, but she says, no. She says, I've gone bankrupt nearly twice. She says, online it looks great, but and I was like, okay, my error, I made an assumption. And she made an assumption that, I didn't want to talk to her and things like that. So that's another reason why we need to have open communication.
Yeah. And to take it offline, because it
Yeah,
is reality is not what appears on our
yeah,
screens most of the time.
absolutely. What people portray is not always the reality. You're 100% right there, and I think had she just picked up the phone and said, hey, why are you so quiet? What's going on? I probably, it would have been a different story. Um, yeah. So
What is the technology shift? How have you experienced the huge shift in social media, everything being on our phones, and even like being in the military for 11 years and coming out of it? I'm sure like there's been a lot of uh, technology upgrades in that world. What's that been like for you?
yeah, technology, I think technology is great, but I do believe that it can be your friend and it can be your enemy. I know that I've got numerous friends who are absolutely addicted to their phones, and I'm sure you know quite a few as well.
Yeah.
The sad thing is, like, we use our phones for work, we use it for socializing, we use it for communicating. It's just used for everything. If you take your device and you think, oh well, it's replaced an alarm clock, it's replaced the camera, it's replaced watching movies, going to the theater, for example. The list is endless. It's replaced the compass, etc., etc. The list is absolutely endless what this little device can do. And it's sad because people have forgotten to enjoy life without it. Because even when they go on holiday, just quickly check my work emails, and then you think, you know what, 20 years ago, when you went on holiday, you went on holiday. You did not have anybody reminding you that there's 20,000 emails in your inbox and you having heart palpitations just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Before you even get on a plane to go on the holiday, you start stressing about, oh, what am I going to come back to? So in that respect, I do think it's our worst enemy. And I think that people need to learn to switch off, because you got to think, you know what? If I'm not there, is somebody going to die? No, your emails are just not going to be answered. They know you're on holiday and they need to appreciate when you get back, you're going to have some catching up to do. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And sometimes I think, what did I do before my phone? Like how did I pass time? What was I doing? And I
Exactly.
meditate and do all those things, but you can only you can't, well, I guess you could meditate for 16 hours a day, but I can only meditate for 20 minutes to maybe 45 minutes max. And
Yeah.
I feel like I get so much done, and then it's just like my phone is calling to me, and I just really want to figure out what people are doing when they're not on their phones.
But that is so true, because even though, like you were mentioning, you can do meditation, but in the back of your head, you think, okay, you can use your phone to do your meditation,
Yeah, that too.
and this is why I say it's replaced practically everything. It just doesn't make your food for you, Well, it gives you the recipe, but that's also true, So it's very, very sad. And I think that also causes a lot of, personal opinion again, a lot of mental health issues, because certain people, they have addictive personalities, and obviously, diving into all the various social platforms, their life is consumed by who's saying what, who's doing what, who's not doing what, etc. And comparison modes, oh well, have a look at this one. Oh, they look so amazing, because people start comparing themselves with other people on the various platforms. You are you. You have your own unique fingerprints, your own dynamics, your own personality. Every single thing about you is absolutely unique. Why do you want to be somebody else? I don't want another Janet. I like me and me. I don't want somebody to be pretending to be me.
Right.
So why must we be looking at the celebrities, or, oh, this one's website is amazing, if only I could do that? You're not on this planet to if only you can do what somebody else can do. You do what you do to the best of your ability.
And I think that's really powerful coming from you, because you went into your career pretty like head first, feet first, however you want to say it, going into the Air Force straight out of high school and committing to that and growing within and rank and higher positions. How did you, like, I guess what motivated you to do that? How did you find the drive to do that?
Well, I think one of the things that drove me to do it, and this is kind of like more on a personal level, is when I was growing up, as I mentioned earlier, I did, and I don't have an issue talking about it because I've got over it and I've dealt with it. But when I was growing up, I had a really, really challenging childhood. I was raped and abused by various family members, grandfathers, stepbrothers, etc. And I think going into the military, first of all, it was a way for me to escape, and just be, out of the home, in the sense of, if I stayed at home, I wouldn't be exposed to things like that anymore. And yeah, I mean, I faced a lot of challenging times, a hell of a lot of challenging times, actually. But it's just things that, and not everybody can do it. I think it just depends on the person's, your attitude, your resilience, or whether you get to a point and you just say, okay, I can't handle this anymore. I need to change. In order for things to change, you must change something. You can't expect things to change when it's like, oh, well, I woke up today and the sun is shining. Tomorrow, okay, I woke up today and the sun is shining and nothing's changed, So a slow process, very slow process, but it was just a question of mindset. I needed to change my mindset if I wanted things to change, because I was looking at things around me, seeing people, progress and be successful, etc. And I thought, I want a slice of that cake. I don't like being where I am. And I did realize that I'm the only person that can change it. Nobody can change it for me,
Right.
So it's hard, but depends on the person. Resilience.
And absolutely, because as much as you're the only person who can change it, with abuse, you're also having people who are affecting your growth, and
Yeah,
having to overcome that obstacle on top of just the regular obstacle that is living and existing in this life.
exactly. But
So
yeah, it's
how did you cope with surviving abuse and getting out of that situation?
Oh, I did. Let's put it to you. I was work in progress, for want of a better word. Um, there were times, I'll be very honest with you, there were times where suicide was definitely on the cards from a young age, from the age of like 13. And I honestly, this is me, my personal experience and what I believe in. I honestly believe there's a God, because if there wasn't, I would not be sitting having this conversation with you. Because I believe there's a purpose for me. Yeah, I kind of went through suicide stages a few times, but I'm still here. So I've realized that my experience and what I've gone through, I am around so that I can show people that they can be victors and not victims,
Right.
that they can get through. No matter how difficult it seems, you can get through it. I mean, I threw myself into my work. I ended up doing NLP. I ended up becoming a qualified counselor. And I just got into various charity programs, because I felt like I could relate to those people. I mean, I've done counseling on individuals that have gone through similar experiences that I have. And I think it makes a difference when you know what they've gone through and you've experienced it yourself. That's my personal opinion. And I've always done whatever I could in the sense of, you know what, there's a course, let me improve myself. I, every course that came along, which I felt interested me, I kind of like dived in and I write like, I'm doing this, because I was doing it for me. I wasn't doing it for anybody else. I wasn't doing it to prove anything to anybody but myself, believing that I'm worth it. Because I think that was one of the things that I did experience. I felt like I was unworthy. I felt everything was my fault. I felt guilty for a lot of things. But then you get to, like I say, through a lot of various development things, I realized, okay, this is not my fault. I didn't ask for it. It's happened.
Mm-hmm.
I can't change it, but I can maybe change people's lives. And that's the way I started looking into it. And that's why I also got into coaching. I thought, you know what, because I do believe that I can help people. And I do believe that I can resonate with some people. Sorry.
Would you say that it's a healing process that you go
Yes.
through? Is it something that you do heal from or ever heal from?
I do believe that when I, for example, did NLP and I studied counseling, sorry, I've just got a very scratchy throat. And I've gone into this coaching and stuff like that, I do believe that there's always a form of healing constantly, and just improving your mindset, improving your attitude, increasing your resilience. And as weird as it may sound, just realizing that those individuals are sick individuals. And then realizing that what they've done to me potentially may have happened to them, because 9 out of 10 times that's normally the pattern that it follows. And then I just feel sorry for them. I'm thinking, if only you could be helped, and realizing that this is a sickness. But healing, healing is definitely, it's a daily thing. When I have people reaching out to me and say, oh, how did you do it? Then, I listen to them. and we'll discuss how they're feeling, because a lot of people, what I've come to realize is, if they've gone through things like that and they're talking to somebody that may not have experienced that, they don't tell you everything.
Yeah.
Because they don't know if you'll really understand. There's people, oh yeah, I understand how you feel, and you're thinking, no, you don't, because you haven't experienced it. So no, you don't understand. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm.
And I'm curious what you would say to someone who is in the position of needing someone to talk to or wanting help, but in that situation where they may be either afraid to speak up, they're afraid that people won't understand, and maybe even at the edge of their rope in terms of mental health, suicidal ideation. What sort of guidance would you give to someone in that position who is looking for someone who understands?
I, I think one of the things is, for me, this is my personal opinion, is the people that I've helped, is when I know that there's something similar, then I am quite happy to tell a piece of my story, because I don't want to take over the conversation and make it all about me, because that's not fair, you know. But when I acknowledge somebody's pain and what they've gone through, is acknowledging and saying, listen, this has happened to me. So, feel free to speak to me, because I will understand what you're going through.
Right.
But it is knowing that you don't share your entire story, because like I say, at the end of the day, the story, their interaction is not my story, it's their story. Because if I give a little snippet of what I've been through, even if I just had to say something really, really brief and say, for example, I appreciate you reaching out. I just want to let you know that, in my lifetime, I've also experienced rape. I've also experienced suicide. So whatever you want to share with me is definitely confidential, only between us and the four walls. And I'm almost sure that I'll be able to understand what you're going through. You don't have to go into war and peace.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It's like your vulnerability as a coach or a mentor even is allowing space for the person who's reaching out to be vulnerable as well.
Yes. Yeah. So funny enough, that is one of the things, because I was initially probably slightly off topic, but thinking of my coaching niche, I'm thinking of looking at resilience. Sort of like resilience within individuals who've gone through trauma, for want of a better word, because I do believe I can help them.
Yes, I think resilience is an important one to learn. Like that's something that like I've had to practice just to keep going. I always tell myself, just keep going, just keep going. What does resilience mean to you, and how has that looked throughout your life?
I think with me, resilience is keeping one foot in front of the other, going ahead one step at a time, even if you're going forward half a step at a time. But is reminding myself that all the things that I have accomplished and all the things that I have gone through just have made me stronger, both mentally and probably physically in a way, but just the mindset. So not allowing the little demons that sit on your shoulder and whisper to you saying, you're not good enough, you know, everything's your fault. No, it's not my fault. It was never my fault. Um, key key is keeping one foot in front of the other and just reminding myself that, I mean, look, you have good days and you have bad days. We are human. You know, if we were perfect and smiley all the time, I'd be like, we must be robots then.
Exactly.
And we're
I think
not.
the conversation about strength really interests me as well, because
Yes.
we become so strong through our traumas and our experiences, but then
Mm,
there's a part of me that's like, I just want to be soft. I want to be weak in a way.
yeah.
And but I think there's strength in that also. So, and I guess that ties into vulnerability as well. Can you tell me about, I guess, what your thoughts are on that? Like, do you feel like you always have to be strong, or and
No.
that's just how you are? Do you ever
No.
yearn for like that, like just to, I don't know, I don't even know how to put it, like the peace and
No. I
the,
think
yeah.
I think that when it comes to, I want to be human as well. I don't want to be looked at, and I'm just going to keep the military element in it. I don't want to be looked
Hmm.
at as the strong soldier that just carries on and, you know, is resilient to everything. Uh, um, I want to be considered as that person who's vulnerable, that person who has a soft side, that has the
Hmm.
gentle side. You know, when I need to, I will put my armor up. When I need to, I'll take my armor down.
Hmm.
But if you don't incorporate all elements, then to me, you're not human. Like I said, then you're a robot. Um, and I think to be your authentic self, you have to reveal all good, bad, ugly, hard, soft, the whole
Hmm.
package. Because that's how we are made. We are not made to be walking around with this massive armor and nothing can penetrate it.
Right.
I'm the most empathetic person. If I see anybody getting hurt, I'll be in tears. I'm
Yeah.
so, I can get so emotional. Honestly, I can be watching a movie and my hubby will look at me and he'll be like, "Are you okay?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." Meantime, the tears are running, you know, because a
Yeah.
dog's just run over or an old person is having a hard time. So I'm very empathetic and I can get very emotional as well. So
Yeah, I think it sounds like resilience is experiencing the spectrum of emotions and allowing what comes
yeah,
up to come up and still carrying on.
absolutely. Um, I mean, can you imagine having a relationship with somebody who's just a robot all the time and you just think, I just want them to laugh with me. I just
Yeah,
want them to cry with me. I don't want them to be this strong person that's, you know, wiping away my tears all the time. You know,
right.
unfortunately, my hubby's like that. You know, he'll be like, we'll laugh together, we'll cry together. There'll be days where I'm supporting him, days where he's supporting me. And that's another thing about strong relationships. You know, you can't, it's all or nothing. It's not
Hmm.
70% or 80%. It is all or nothing. 100%, 100%, both sides.
Yes. I have a couple different questions that I want to ask,
Yeah,
but with,
sure.
because when what you're saying about resilience and not being that stone wall, because I think sometimes people can think of resilience as like I can make it through anything, the hardest things, and like
No,
I like it's just like rain falling on a rock, but like that's not quite it, because there is that the there is the full range of emotions where yes, you can make it through anything, but you can be sad about it. Like that's still being
absolutely.
resilient.
Absolutely. I think resilience, maybe another word that should be coupled with resilience is just the endurance.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, yeah. So I think they're pretty closely coupled. Um, because resilience doesn't mean to say that you get through everything unscathed. Absolutely not. Resilience for me is you will come out with scars on the other end, but the fact is you came out on the other end.
Yes.
That's yeah, that's resilience to me. You know, you'll have your war, you know, your war scars,
Yeah.
but it'll be proof that you got through it. You know, the journey was tough, but you got through it.
And any words of wisdom for when the journey does get tough? Like, how do you keep yourself going?
Um, I think for me, it's a reminder of how far I've already come. But I also think that people mustn't always look at the big achievements. Sometimes it's just the little achievements. If it's a question of, you know what, yesterday I didn't believe I was going to make the day. Today I'm looking at it and thinking, you know what, yesterday wasn't so bad. I got through it. It's just little achievements that sometimes pull you through, and not to always focus on these big aha moments, because you don't always need the big aha moments to pull you through.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for this massive, you know, revelation to come through and be like, oh, wow, you know, no, it's the little things. I managed to get out of bed this morning. I'm blessed. I made myself a nice cup of coffee. I've had a breakfast. And then I start just being thankful for the little things, because when you change your mind to gratitude, you will actually realize how much you've got to be grateful for. You know, we're very quick to complain, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that. But you think, you know what, I was able to have a nice hot shower today. It was -3 this morning. How many people are living on the streets? How many people are lying on a cardboard box, you know, to try and keep the cold air from coming through? How many people aren't even able to brush their teeth?
Yeah.
Just simple little things. When you stop, one of the things that I do have, and I religiously do it every single day, is I've got a journal. I've got two journals, but I've got one which is attitude of gratitude. Every single morning, I write down a minimum of 3 things that I'm grateful for. And that can be anything from, you know, just being able to look outside and see the beautiful sky and the clouds and thinking, I have vision. I can see the colors on the trees. I can see the little squirrels hopping up and down, to whatever. But every single day, I will write down 3 things, minimum of 3 things that I'm grateful for.
That's an amazing practice. And I get in my modes where I do it, and I will do it to get me out of a downward spiral. And then it's like when everything's good, I'm like, oh, everything's good. Like I can just be grateful in the moment. But I think the everyday practice of it, no matter what, it's like you are getting the high of gratitude all the time. And you're
Exactly.
keeping yourself in that energy.
And it's the way to start the day. So, I mean, if you want to make it a habit, just set yourself a daily alarm for whatever and say, just put gratitude, you know, and you can make up I mean, I've actually titled mine Attitude of Gratitude. And I write in it every single day. But for me, and like I say, this is probably different to a lot of people, but what I do is I've written in different colored pen. So, because the list just carries on, you know, I don't put a date or anything, I just follow through. So I might start with pink today, tomorrow I'll pick up a blue pen, then I can just see, you know, how many did I write down for today? Oh, today I wrote down 5, you know.
Right.
Yesterday I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, but my minimum is 3, because otherwise I might just write 1. And I'm like, no, I've got to have something to aim for. And that's what I do.
And I really like what you said about being like appreciating yourself for the little things, because we were talking about relationships and how important it is to give the gift of gratitude to your partner or the person you're dating or a sibling, spouse, anything like that. But also to give that appreciation to yourself is just as important, because we can be
Mm.
the hardest on ourselves.
That is so, so true, because simple things will be like, oh, I'm overweight, or I wish my hair, I had thicker hair or curly hair. We've always got something to criticize ourselves for. And then you have to remind yourself, every one of us is unique. I don't want to be, I don't know, Beyonce or whoever. I'm me. If I was supposed to be her, then she would be somebody else and I would be Beyonce. And that's the way you need to look at it. We are, and that's the problem with media and advertising. They flash all this fancy things on covers, and it's like, this is what a perfect body looks like, or this is what the perfect person. No, we're all perfect in our imperfect world, every single one of us. So why do you? I don't want to be Courtney. Courtney doesn't want to be Janet.
Yeah.
You
And it's
want to
like
be.
through the media, it's like it's selling this idea of perfection, and if you achieve these these metrics, if you do get this look, buy this thing, then you'll be happy. Guaranteed happiness if you are able to like fit
Yeah.
this mold, and that's never really how it goes.
But my
And
question is,
yeah,
who decided that that was perfect? Who decided that being size whatever is perfect? Who decided that for this height, this weight, this is, this height, this is the weight you need to be, or whatever? Who actually said this is the perfect one? Somebody who's in media, somebody who's in advertising, somebody that wanted to make money out of people. Because if you
yeah,
think
well,
about it, where does it come from? Where does it come from?
capitalism.
Exactly. So it's just so bizarre how we are just a bunch of sheep. You see something, let's follow the trend. It's the same as gadgets. Oh, well, the latest iPhone is out, the latest Apple Watch is out, or the latest, well, I need to get it.
Yeah.
It's not a necessity.
I could go on and on about this because I did live in a school bus for a year off grid in the attempt of escaping capitalism, because the pursuit of buying things keeps us working, and
Yeah,
in turn working feeds the machine, and the more
yeah.
money we make, the more things we want to buy, and the more things we buy, the more money we have to make, and it all just keeps going up and up and more, and no one thinks to just slow down and stop and consider what it is that we actually need to survive: food, water, air, shelter, love. Like it, it's mesmerizing, and
It,
people forget.
yeah. And the biggest of all is love. If you
Hmm.
think about it, if everybody just felt connected to somebody and felt loved, that
Yeah.
has such a powerful impact on your life that you will
Yeah.
not worry about, I need a 3-story house and I need to drive the latest, I don't know, Lamborghini or what. Don't need it. It's not
Yeah.
necessary. You just want to feel connected. You just want to feel safe. You just want to feel loved, and you just want to feel valued. That's it.
Hmm.
So, and those things are important. And if you start with being grateful for what you've got, slowly that gratitude just increase. And there's so many things, if you just look around you, to say, oh my goodness, I am so thankful, you know, for every single part of my body, every
Hmm.
single, you know, organ is functioning well, my heart is pumping, and air is going through my lungs, etc., etc. We always look at superficial things, or, oh well, think a little bit deeper. Makes a big difference.
I really like that you also mentioned being grateful and appreciative for small things, and taking like one step at a time, just little steps day by day, as opposed to even like the idea of a big goal and a small goal. And
Yeah.
like because that is something that I get really distracted with also. Like I'll have a big goal in mind and I can break down in all these little steps, but a part of me, just my energy scattered towards all these different things to try to reach that big goal faster. But goals aside, focusing on just what you already have is so important.
Absolutely. It's being present in the present moment,
Hmm.
because we always want to look beyond that. We always want to look at what tomorrow is bringing. Look at what you've got right now.
Any final words of wisdom that you may have, or anything you want to share about your coaching, your
Yeah,
life lessons?
I think the key is, and I've mentioned it already, is just having an attitude of gratitude, be present in the moment, and don't always look beyond the now. You know,
Hmm.
be you and nobody else.
I love that.
So
Thank you,
yeah.
Janet.
Thank you so much, Courtney. It was lovely speaking to you. Really
Lovely
appreciate
speaking to you as
it.
well. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing your story.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and join us in our next conversation where we'll be exploring the extraordinary lives of ordinary people. I'm Courtney Lofton, and this is Ordinary Eccentrics.